Welcome to this quick overview to triggers, actions, variables, and expressions for the Byte Lynx editor. So today we'll be going briefly over how map actions work, how variables and expressions work, and just some general design principles about how everything usually fits together and how you might want to design your levels for scripting purposes to make custom events or various other actions take place that are not part of the normal gameplay rule set. So they involve like scripted actions, dialogue, winning and losing on specific conditions, pinging the level, and other things like that. So first off, we're going to start by making an action. So to make an action, we'll want to go into the data editor, which you can find here at the top left-hand corner, click on the map action tab, and then click create. For this one, we are going to have it just lose the level. This is going to be the action that actually does the making. You notice we actually can't create it until we've selected the type. There are a lot to choose from, but this one we're going to use the end level. This works for both victory and defeat conditions. So once we have our lose level map action, we are going to set the type to restart level defeat. We are going to change the message from victory to you have lost. And you can also put some dialogue. In this case, I'm just going to get rid of that one. No dialogue at the end. Now, a map action by itself is not executed unless it is part of a trigger or trigger set. So one easy way to make this happen is to have a trigger that then is going to end, it'll trigger, and cause the map action to be executed, to enact it. So now that we have this map action, we go to triggers, and we're going to create one of these. In this case, I'm going to create a building trigger, which is build 10 lances. It's the name of it. That doesn't mean it's going to actually check that. This is just the name. To actually make it say, hey, I want this to trigger on building of the lances, we have to configure it here. So this is the target player. We want it to be for construction. And you notice this is the flags here, so it can be on multiple things. We only want for construction, however, in this case. The count, the number of these things, we want this to be 10. The type of building, we want this to be lance. And then there is some optional parameters, such as a timeout. So if we wanted to have it be like build 10 lances before 10 seconds happens, you could put in a timeout. But this will be good for there. Now if we scroll down, we can see there's some dialogue that we can enter in here if we wanted to for various cases. For example, if we finish building the 10 lances, we could say, good job. You built 10 lances. However, this is not the map action that we want to actually put in. So to put the map action, we have to scroll down and you'll see these three fields here. Startup map actions, timeout map actions, and triggered map actions. So this is what is triggered when the action or the trigger actually fires. The timeout is if you have a timeout. This will do nothing if you don't have any timeout. It's just ignored. Anyway, so if we click here, we can add our lose level. We can also click this gear if we want to jump to it to make sure it's exactly the resource we want. So now we have this build 10 lances trigger. However, it's not part of our level yet and won't be put in place. Additionally, we haven't provided it like a location. So if we go here, we can say set trigger location, and we'll just say build it within this area. So let's get this actually on our, now we have everything set up here, let's put this onto a trigger set and then onto the map itself. So a trigger set is just a collection of triggers that can evaluate with specific rules. In this case, we're just going to do, call this one main, and we're just going to make it a set. When we create that, we can then go and add our build 10 lances triggers. And then now that we have this, we can add it to our map. If we haven't added main to our map, nothing will evaluate. So over here, we'll see there is a map startup trigger set. These are the starting set of trigger sets that will be evaluated. and we can add our main. Now it's always good to just double check your work, so you can use the like go to button here, the wrench, click on that, and follow these all the way down. So as you can see, we started here, go to main, we want to build lances, and then at the bottom here, we should have our triggered action, lose level, and hey, we've got it all the way down at the bottom. So that tells us that this in fact should fire. There's one more thing I want to double check, is that this trigger can be displayed as an objective. If we turn this on, it will show up in our objective lists. We don't have to provide any objective text here, and defaults will be provided if it is empty. But if we do want to customize it, we can do so. All right, so I think this is ready for testing. Let's give it a go. Test. As you can see, this trigger is working and has a nice debug box around where it is. This debug box will not show up unless you are testing the level, so you don't have to worry about exposing that to players who are playing your finished level. Now, let's try and build some lances. You'll also notice we have that construct 10 lances objective. So when we build one of these, that will finish construction, 9, and we can build a few more. Oh, we're out of energy. I'm going to use cheat code. Cheat codes, you can press PLZ enter to give you a bunch of money for quick testing. So we built 10 lances. We've lost! Game has ended. Now, I believe we didn't get a dialogue because the level ended immediately. But, if you didn't end the level, then it would probably have played the dialogue. Good job, you built 10 lances. Awesome. So, that has been setting up just some basic actions to play your level once some triggers go off. Variables and expressions. So now we're going to spend some time making use of variables and the expressions to modify those variables. So sometimes you have your easy case where you can just say, hey, this whole area, I want to know if 10 buildings are built here. Or maybe you care about multiple spaces that have different objectives and you want to know if like 2 of those 3 things has been completed. So let's make some logic here. That is, we have a trigger for each of these nanites spots to have a miner built atop of it. And then we're going to have that be recorded to change a variable that then is incremented. So the first thing we want to do is create the variable. To do this, we can go to our main trigger and we can add a startup map action that creates it. Let's make that map action now. Go here, we're going to create new variable. So create variable is the type, and then we'll say create map variables. Now there's a type to variables for like basic, map, and pack. We can just leave it on basic for the moment. To make a map variable, we want to type in the name and the initial value. So in this case, we'll say this is miners built. And we're going to set it to 0. Once we've typed this in, we press the plus button, and this will be created as a map variable. Now, if we go back to our main, we can add that as a startup action, create map variables. Now that this has happened on our main startup here, we can go through and reference it in other triggers. So I'm going to make one more map action that modifies the variable to increment it by 1. So we're going to create another one, which is going to be a variable expression, and we're going to say add 1 miner. Or maybe we could say 1 miner built. We'll just say add 1 miner. And this expression is going to be the same thing, but instead of saying equals, we're going to be able to do other expressions such as plus equals, multiply equals, divide equals, and others. If we go to here, just double check the name real quick. Miners built. So in here, miners built plus equal 1. And then we press a plus. So whenever this map action is evaluated, we will increment miners built by 1, which means that this will go from 0 to 1. Now let's make some map action, or some triggers to modify these values and then check to see if they have changed. So first off, we're going to create just like a built miner in spot 0. This is going to be, we'll actually do spot 1. This will be a building trigger again. And we'll do the same as mostly before. I am going to put a trigger on this, and I'm going to say spot 1 so that we know if this has happened or not. And then we're going to go to construct again. 1. This time we want a miner. No timeout. None of this. We're all good there. And now when this trigger occurs, we want to increment that variable. So we're going to go and add 1 miner. Now let's put a spot for this trigger to actually fire. In this case, we're going to do this top left-hand corner here. Now that we have this trigger all set up, we could make a new one from scratch. However, it is easier to copy it and just change the name to our second spot, and then change the fields that we want. So in this particular instance, for spot 2, we're going to clear and set the location to here. We're going to change this to spot 2. And everything else can stay the same, even our add 1 miner. So now let's make one more copy for spot 3 and do the same. Clear and set the location to right there. And then change this to spot 3. And there we go. So these are just free-floating triggers though, however. So let's go back to our main and add them in. So spot 1, spot 2, spot 3. Now when these fire, they should all increment the miner's built variable. We can check that variable with another trigger and, let's say, have some dialogue play. So let's make that trigger now. If we go here, we can click variable, and we'll say when miners built is 2. And we can also show this one here. I think that would be valuable to know. So we're going to leave the default, which will just be this value here. And we can say miners built is equal to 2. We could also use a greater than equal if we might think that it's possible they could like build 2 at the same time or whatever. So when miners is greater than or equal to 2, then we want to like have some dialogue. In this case, we'll say you've built 2 miners. And I think that's probably good. Now that we have this trigger set up, we are going to add it to our main. So once again, we go through main here, and add our when miners built is 2. So this will trigger, then we'll be good. All right, so let's give this a test. Menu, test. Failed to find miners built. Oh, I have a typo. Should be miners built. So this is an example of seeing some errors. They'll pop up here. In this case, this is being evaluated once per second. So we're going to get these going on forever. We do, however, have all of our spots, spot 1, 2, 3, and our miners build, which, yeah, there's the typo. It's in the trigger. And we can see that we have one trigger there, one trigger there, and one trigger there. So if we build this here, spot 1 should go away. Let's just check that. Yep. And right here, that should go away. Perfect. So let's go fix that typo real quick. And then we'll do one more test, and we should be good. So this condition is not built, it's built. Miners built. Oh, we need to, sorry, greater than equal to 2. All right. And we test. Hey, no errors. So miners built is greater than or equal to 2. So once we build this one, and then this one, you can have both get built. And now we should get some dialogue. You've built 2 miners. Perfect. This is a way you can use variables to track if multiple events have happened in various different locations of the level, or maybe you want to keep track of other things such as the player lives, points, score, or other sorts of values. They can also be particularly good to keep track of like what stage you're on if you're doing checkpoints, and then you can do conditional like reconfiguring certain variables depending upon, or variables, reconditioning certain like parts of the map depending upon what stage you're on after you went to like reset the level with the checkpoint. Example of that in the Byte bound level. All right, now I'd like to take a minute to go over the finer details about how you might lay out your level and how the triggers work. So triggers are all going to be added onto the map startup trigger set. However, there can be a map action to reset them, allowing you to do things such as loops or branching sort of paths where you like choose A or choose B conditionally to be added to the set. This means you don't have to have everything, all of your triggers on the set. You just need to make sure that this will eventually branch out and like, you know, add or not add certain things. On trigger sets, there is this completion type. This is very useful for if you wanted to do things such as sequences, or if you wanted like multiple events to all, or multiple triggers to reach, like if any of them fire, then like some end result happens. So an example of this might be, is you want to use the any because you want to set off an alarm. If the wires are like, or like you build a wire in the wrong place, or a wire is damaged or killed in various locations of the level, and all of these triggers, if any of them fires, then the alarm goes off. And this would be very useful for that. Sequence is very helpful if you want to just make a number of things happen right after another. Grandstand has a pretty good set of sequences that you can look at as more deeper examples. But this is like, hey, do A, and then do B, and then do C. So in this case, if we turn this into a sequence, we have to build 10 lances, then this spot trigger would start, and then we build the spot, and then we build this, and we build this. In this case, because we lose after we build 10 lances, we wouldn't actually get this far. But if we were to delete this, then it would do 1, 2, 3, and then this would trigger. So we wouldn't actually be looking at them. But because this was all, it did all of them at the same time. Now, sets can also just do actions on startup and can fail or succeed. What fail and success is dependent upon how the trigger is set up. So a trigger generally, when it fires for the type of trigger it is, be it like a building is built or some events happen, an execute time has like expired for a delay, some resources have been gathered or collected, or maybe some variables, those all can be configured to be either a success case or a failure case. By default, the timeout is failure, and the trigger is success for all of the triggers. But you can configure them to say, hey, no, like trigger actually is failure, in which case the containing set will get a fail. If that is an all, for example, and there's any fails, it then shuts down the remaining triggers in the set and pulls out. So if this is inside of another sequence and we had a failure in here and this was an all, it would terminate this set early. This is helpful if you wanted to have like certain things be optional, where you're like, hey, I want to do like go to the market, like go to this place and then go to that place and then go to this other place. But if at any point in doing those 3 steps or those 3 objectives, you what's a good example? If at any point in one of those 3 examples you like built a triplex because you're weird or something, right? You built a triplex. Then you want to have that be a failure case for the trigger, in which case you would make a trigger that has trigger is failure set to true would be like, no, even though normally buildings like getting an event is a success case, make it a failure case so that the containing set terminates prematurely when it isn't all. So you could use these to kind of set things up to follow a specific control flow. Looping is accomplished very similarly. So if you wanted this loop to go over and over and over again, so let's do a quick example of that because I feel like loops are pretty common. We could then make a map action that is evaluated to re-put this up once it's finished. We're going to have to get rid of this because we don't want to recreate the map variable multiple times. But we'll say main. I'm going to rename this actually main loop. And we're going to build 3 miners. And then we can do on success of that, repeat it. We could make a map action, for example, that does that right here. That's going to be create trigger set repeat main loop, and that will repeat main loop. We go back to the main loop, and then on success we could do this. And notice if we had a failure, we could maybe do something different, right? We could do like lose level, right? So if one of these is negative, right, we lose level. Otherwise, just keep repeating it. Build the 3 miners, repeat. And we can see that at action if we go back and to our test. So we have the 3 spots. Can build one there, build one there. Now see, these will actually go away. Oh, we didn't get rid of that, the map action. And so it's like, hey, we don't have the variable. So that's going to pop up whenever we build a miner in those locations. Not a big deal. But you see, now it's restarted. So if you want to do loops where things happen over and over and over again, that can be very helpful. Especially if you're doing something where the same action is repeated by and large, like, you know, exactly the same each time. All right, this has been a quick overview of the scripting and systems such as triggers, actions, variables, and expressions. If you'd like to have more questions or like just want to chat with the developers about a feature you'd like to add, be sure to poke us on Discord and we can maybe figure something out to be added. These tools are pretty advanced, so if you also have just questions about like, hey, what's going wrong with my map, you might also be able to get some help from us or other people on the Discord. So hope you have a great day, and bye.